Let's talk about the EFL potential price cap. Now, this came home to me as a West Brom fan because we're due to play Coventry in a few weeks' time. And Albion fans were outraged this week that the £45 announced by Coventry City, that there's £35 for children as well. So, if I was to take my 10-year-old daughter who's mad keen on the baggies to the game, that's 80 quid for the two of us for a 12:30 kickoff and a game that's televised. It just seems outrageous. And Coventry are also charging the same prices for a Christmas fixture against Swansea City as well. Even prices for senior citizens and for young adults, which are discounted from the full 45, are 40 quid. Now, should be made clear, Coventry City are doing nothing wrong in terms of any EFL regulation, clearly not in terms of any law, but it does literally feel a bit rich, these kind of prices for a championship game.
Yes. So the Premier League has had an away ticket price cap at £30 for almost 10 years now. Now, £30 10 years ago is not £30 now. After some of the inflation that we've enjoyed or endured, it would probably be more like 37 or £38. But the Premier League have sort of not bothered to update it during those years. And I think the reason why they can afford to be quite relaxed about it is because ticketing forms a much smaller part of a Premier League club's revenue than the Football League club's revenue. And of course, away fans, an even smaller part of that. So if you're thinking about a typical Premier League stadium of 40,000 people with maybe 3,000 away fans in the stadium. So really, you're talking about, if you put it up by an extra 10 quid, you're talking about an extra 300,000, quid. Sorry, 30,000 quid. It's, even if you multiply that over the whole season, in terms of a Premier League club's total revenues of 200 million to a billion, these are small things, and therefore they can afford to sort of just say every year to the Football Supporters Association, look at us, we're the good boys. We're not, we're behaving really well here. It's still 30, etc. Go down into the Football League, and ticketing revenue is 50% of the total amount of money that a club will take in. And as we all know, Football League clubs struggle for cash. So they tend to look for, rather like our blessed government is at the moment, they tend to look down the back of any sofa they can find for any cash that they can lay their hands on with the smallest amount of medium-term damage, let's say. So if they go and stick their prices up on their own fans across the board, they run the risk of losing repeat business, right? Because those fans go, well, do you know what? It's a bit rich for me. I'm not going to buy my season ticket. And then when you've lost that season ticket holder, maybe you've lost that season ticket holder for good, and so on and so forth. Away fans are a sort of have been a relatively pain-free target. And I don't know if you remember, it wasn't that long ago, the campaign which said 20 is plenty, right? So the fact that the Premier League were at 30, that 20 to 30 range, maybe with inflation, 25 to 35, that sort of range feels to me about where the market should sit. But in the absence of any rules, some clubs, and obviously you've highlighted on one being Coventry City, but they're not the only one. They're the most extreme one, but they're not the only one. Some clubs in the Championship have said, well, over the course of the entire season, extracting an extra £10 per head per away fans is going to make us an extra £500,000. And that £500,000 is going to be extremely difficult to extract from our own fans. We're going to get an awful lot of squealing when we meet up with the fan groups. We do it from our own fans. So let's do it to away fans. Now, I happen to know that in preparation for this season, the Football League had a vote on capping away ticket prices at 30. And there was a majority for doing that. But one club, which at this point must remain nameless, threatened legal action were that to go ahead in terms of being a restraint of trade. And I think there was a sort of time out element to it, which is that the Football League executives may have felt they didn't quite have time to work out whether that was a realistic threat or not. So it ended up just heading down. Okay, we'll have no rules for the next season, but please everyone behave themselves. Now, interestingly, Coventry, I can exclusively reveal, were not the club who threatened legal action. But they clearly, whoever the chief executive at Coventry is at the moment, is like, well, whilst the opportunity still exists, let's use it. Let's go for it. Let's try and get as much money in as possible. So I think having spoken to a few Football League chief executives in the last day or two since this news came out, I would be surprised if for next season there is not a cap in place, whether that be at 30 or whether it be at 35, all inclusive of handling costs and all that type of stuff. Because often it's 30 plus a £2 handling fee or whatever it might be. But I do think there's going to be some cap put in place. Yes.
Well, not before time. And it's interesting that I didn't realize there had been a vote. I'm not sure that was publicized at the time, Charlie. So thank you for that little exclusive, because I remember reading news reports saying that the EFL were due to vote on a cap for the price of away tickets, and that was expected to be a cap in line with the Premier League £30 cap. Less well publicised then was the fact that the vote went ahead and it was voted down. I have invited, by the way,
Well,
Doug
I'm
King.
not sure. I have to say, I'm not sure if the vote did go ahead because what quite often happens in these
Mm,
situations
mm.
is just before the vote happens, if there is a legal challenge, often the premise of the vote will be challenged before the vote takes place, and the Football League executives will then have to decide whether to press ahead with the vote. So I'm not quite clear on whether the vote happened and then there was the threat of legal action subsequent to that, or if the threat of legal action prior to the vote happened. I'm not quite sure which of those it was. I'm not breaking any confidences because by the time this happened, I'd actually left my position at Charlton Athletic. So this is investigative journalism, not inside information. Um,
And would
um,
you have voted for it at Charlton in your time? And obviously,
well,
you're the chief exec, but
I believe you're visiting Charlton next Tuesday, Adrian.
yeah,
What's the cost of the ticket?
Charlton have rather magnificently capped the prices for away fans for this game and for their own supporters, which is something I'll come to just £20. So
Well, there
good,
you go.
good on them for that. But so just so we understand this, Charlie, I noticed you ducked my question, and you may answer it or you may not, about whether you would have voted for it. But the
Oh no,
rule,
I'd have voted for it. No, I would definitely have voted
yeah,
for it. And
yeah.
I've never been involved in a club that's charged the high levels for away fans. Never. No,
No,
absolutely
no.
not.
Well, and Sheffield Wednesday, certainly in the Chancery era, were another one of those clubs who tended to charge at the higher end. But I think Coventry City is the highest. And I think that people, particularly given the West Brom game's a televised game, the Swansea game again at the Christmas period, when obviously there's a lot of demands on people spending, people felt that over and above what they regard as excessive costs, these were insensitive prices given that context. But as I understand it, there is an EFL regulation that says that away supporters cannot be charged more than home supporters for equivalent accommodation. Now, of
But that's a
course,
rather subjective thing. The
but
problem with
that's
that
correct.
rule is
It's correct though, isn't it? That is an
that is
EFL
correct.
regulation. So, of
That,
course, then as the away supporter, unlike the home supporter, you can't choose where you go. So you can't say,
that's
"Oh,
right.
there's another part of the ground there," or there's a junior membership scheme that might make my ticket cheaper on the day. Therefore, I'll go in that section. You're not allowed that. You're told where to go. We understand why. There's a history of match day violence that is associated with that. But you're in quite a submissive position then as a consumer, because you're told where you can and where you can't go in the ground. Another factor in Coventry City's decision, Charlie, and in fairness to them, I think we should point this out, is that they have 24,000 season ticket holders. Good on them for that. That's a great achievement. But their own casual supporters, their own, as it were, pay on the day supporters, will also have to pay this £45 and £35 for kids and so on. So it is visited upon Coventry City supporters, but the vast majority of Coventry City supporters in a stadium with a 32,000 capacity have a season ticket. And their season tickets, I can exclusively reveal, cost £440 for 23 home games. So this is where there's a little bit of, in my view, trickery, because the average Coventry City fan will pay less than £20 admission to that game and less for a child ticket. Now, of course, those are people who've invested long term in the club as season ticket holders, who've put their money down regardless of the success or otherwise of the Sky Blues this season. So good on them for that. But clearly, as an away fan, You're not going to take out a season ticket at Coventry City. So that cost benefit that you get as a season ticket holder is not available to away fans. So you've got your arm rammed up your back if you want to go to this game as an away fan.
In the 2 years of doing this podcast with you, Adrian, I don't think I've ever heard you speak more passionately on a topic. And I like the fact you're doing it while wearing an Andy Cap sort of style hat.
I love wearing my new cap. You're the second person this week who's compared me to Andy Cap. The other one was Robert Lloyd, lead singer of the veteran indie band The Nightingale. So you're in good
Oh,
company, Charlie.
fantastic! Excellent. Love the Nightingales. That's great. Well, I'm in good. I'm in good company. So let me. Everything you say is true. Let me put just a few counterpoints. Right. So first of all, that it is true, of course, that if a season ticket holder turns up to every single match, then they do have a heavily discounted ticket. But on average, season ticket holders turn up to around about 80% of the matches. Right. That's the rule of thumb. So if you have 23 matches in your season ticket package, on average, they'll turn up about 19 times, right? So you actually just bear that in mind. Secondly, the season ticket holders get a discount partially for cash flow purposes, right? So they're the people who put the money up, in advance in a block, which then enables the club to trade through some difficult months. It doesn't have much money coming in. That's another purpose of the discount. So the season ticket holders, I don't think anyone should begrudge the season ticket holders, of course, of which you are one. I don't think anyone should begrudge season ticket holders their discount compared to those who can choose when they turn up. The second point I'd make is that it's not free having away fans at your stadium. The stewarding costs of the away fans is much higher than the stewarding costs of your own fans. Why? Because, how can I put this delicately? Um, there tends to be a higher concentration of known troublemakers, present company accepted, amongst away followings. Whereas in a home stadium, those people might be spread out over the entire stadium or in certain elements of the stadium. In your away stand of 3,000 people, they're all there en masse. And if there is going to be problems, then you need to have it properly stewarded and policed. If you think about what you're paying your police bill for, mostly you're paying your police bill because there are away fans coming to town and so on and so forth. So on the one hand, I have sympathy with clubs saying for us to actually even want to have away fans here, we do need to charge them properly. We can't afford to charge them at some massive discount. They do need to pay their way, and so on and so forth. However, I think there is a balance, and that balance is probably for an EFL match, a championship match, I would guess around about £30, and probably for a League One match, probably in that sort of £25 sort of bracket, and for League Two, maybe in a sort of £22 bracket, etc. You can sort of feel instinctively what feels reasonable. And I think £45 for a football match in a bog standard seat, as opposed to any kind of premium seat with any premium facilities, just feels very toppy. As I said, I wouldn't bring the Premier League into it because they have their own reasons why they can afford to be magnanimous about this particular situation, which Championship clubs cannot. Since they're losing a lot of money and have their backs against the wall financially. But it just feels like that £45, from a club that not that many months ago was, about to take part in a vote on whether it should be 30. 45 feels like a hell of a stretch from 30.
Yeah, I know a few years ago, Leeds United took the view that they would charge opposition supporters what their clubs had charged Leeds away, because Leeds is an extremely well supported club who were doing well at the time, obviously now in the Premier League. They were ripe for being classed as Category A or Category A plus by home teams, and their supporters very often felt ripped off. So Leeds said, okay, if you charge our fans, let's say 45 quid, we're going to charge your fans 45 quid. And if you charge our fans 30 quid, we'll charge them 30 quid. Now, that worked at a club like Leeds United. The reality at most clubs in the Championship is that if you try to do that kind of reciprocal pricing, not only would you, in the most cases, scare off many of the away supporters, you'd also scare off your home fans who would also, under the regulation, have to pay that inflated price. So it worked for Leeds, but it wouldn't work, I don't think, for many other teams at that level.